three in one. Uh, our first tip has to deal with Dark Souls, and actually the second tip does too. First tip is if you're getting burned out or you're tired of doing something, shelve it. Just come back to it later. Because if you're tired and you're just beating your head against a brick wall, you're never going to make any progress by continuing to do that. It's just better to do something else, find something else, get rid of the burnout, come back to it. You'll have your aha moment and you'll make some actual progress. The second tip with Dark Souls is you very much can do Anor Londo now. You can do Anor Londo now, you can do the Catacombs now. Both are actually possible. I don't recommend it. You should go the third route, and yes, there is a third route, and that is the route you're supposed to take. But there's nothing stopping you from doing the other two routes first. It's actually kind of funny. People will do that intentionally to gain items that are meant for the later game early so that they can grind things out early, and it's something people actually do. I really don't recommend doing that though. The third tip actually is something I want to bring up that most people don't realize. It's in the movie The Book of Eli. I've never seen it. I've only seen bits and pieces of it. But there's an interesting scene where he shows that he has a lighter, a little Zippo lighter just like this. And these are easy to pull out with two hands. These are not very easy to pull out with one hand. Don't do that. That's bad for your teeth. But the shopkeeper, when he's asking for a trickle charge on his old radio, which a trickle charge is actually a thing. It's a thing that you shouldn't do because you can electrocute yourself, or you could even blow up the device that you're trying to charge. But it's a thing you can do. You'll have to Google that. But the shopkeeper asks him if he's got chapstick. To which point Eli responds that no, he has cat oil. And fresh cat oil. He specifies that it's fresh cat oil. Eli doesn't realize why the shopkeeper's asking for this. And I'm pretty sure most viewers don't understand why the shopkeeper's asking for it. And the shopkeeper's not trying to use the oil to keep the flame going. Both things are flammable, but that's not it. I mean, yeah, you can put an oil in these, and I really recommend not doing that, because you can turn these into a fireball that goes off in your hand, and that's not fun. But the main reason is you would add fuel to the bottom of these. Okay, so you add your fuel in and everything, and then when you spark it, then you have your flame and all that, and you use it for fire or melting wax or whatever the heck. But the thing about that is these bodies are not really airtight. And so an old thing, and this actually came about during the Great Depression and in World War II, when you have limited supplies, you can't get lighter fuel on a regular basis and all that, because a lot of our troops were sitting in the trenches bored. Most of the time in warfare, it was a lot of standing around, sitting around, waiting. It's not what you see in Call of Duty. It would be like 1 minute of absolute hell in your entire life, and then it would be just okay. That's history. That's what actual war was. It would be terrible and awful in 1 minute of fighting. 1 minute to an hour max. Okay, and in that time, our troops would go deaf from just how incredibly loud war is. But most of the time, they're just kind of sitting around waiting. Just I have to be here. I can't move. But even though they weren't issued lighters, they would find scrap metal and pieces and bits of things, and they would make lighters. Lighter art is not as popular anymore, but it's still a thing. And actually continued into Vietnam as well and further on. Um, but they would have a very limited set amount of kerosene or lighter fluid or any of those things, and they were more meant for their camping supplies, and they'd be given a little bit extra. And the little bit extra would actually be enough to fill one of these. So here's the problem, though, is if one of these, these lighters that they're making, or even the Zippo ones that they might have brought with them from home, if those lighters are leaking the fuel because lighter fluid and kerosene, those type of fuels, they do evaporate just like gasoline does. The vapor is actually what you're igniting when you flick these. What would happen is, it'd completely evaporate and these would dry out and, well, they're empty. So you would take a thing of Vaseline, like Vickers chest rub or something. You'd stick your pinky in it and you'd trace your finger along the body of this, and that would create a seal. And then you push it, of course, back in its body. But if you don't have Vaseline, candle wax works, oil, a lot of different things work. But something the troops were issued with was chapstick. In fact, here's another interesting fact about that. It's not only would they use the chapstick for this purpose, but chapstick wasn't called chapstick. It was called lip balm. This is lip balm. Chapstick itself, the term chapstick is the brand. And before World War II, this brand was actually failing. It wasn't popular. Men were using Vaseline instead. They were using other lip balms, things that would be applied, or they were not using them at all. I mean, men don't typically use, even nowadays, I don't really use these that often. Women would prefer to use lipstick because lipstick has color, okay? But, and here's the other thing is, people were more religious back then. Well, these have things like fat in them or whatnot. That would be a violation of Lent. Or, if you have a different religion, you might not be approving of pig fat or things like that. But after World War II, saw these everywhere. Because men were issued with them, and they used them, they got used to having them, and they realized that there's a lot of things you can do with these. And one of them was making your lighters last longer. Chapstick can do some other things, like if you get oil smudge on your hand, because chapstick is also an oil, you can take oil off your hands using it. You can also do that with WD-40. It can take crayon off the wall. If your zippers just won't zip or unzip, chapstick can lubricate and grease the wheels. If you have a flashlight and you don't want it to get foggy, especially if like the tactical gun lights, you can use this to cover the light. And what happens is when it gets, powder burn from the firearm being used or whatnot, or dust or grit or sand, you just take a cloth, wipe it off, and reapply more chapstick. Chapstick can also be used and applied the same way to phone cameras. They won't make your pictures blurry, but as your phone gets dirty and crusty and whatnot, because unlike me, I'm sure you guys don't clean it like I do, well, chapstick makes it easy to wipe off real quick, and you just apply another layer. And chapstick also does not conduct electricity all that well. So if you have an analog controller, like a PS2 controller, and you got stick drift, you can apply this around the sides of the controller and then rotate your analog stick repeatedly, and you'll basically be working this crap down into the gears and whatnot, and you'll actually push out crime, rust, and dead skin cells and other nasty things. Or you can take a massage wand, I guess you would call it. You know, it's used for other things, but you can also apply that to an analog stick, and that's how you recalibrate an analog stick. You know, real anything that vibrates like that. You could probably like, back massager. Yeah, back massager would work. And here's the other thing: is it wasn't just exclusive to lighters either. A lot of men had flask. And, you know, they weren't supposed to be drinking in the middle of war or something, uh, but they did. And a lot of them snuck in flasks. Flasks are small. They, you know, you put your one cocktail in it, and a flask holds like about one cocktail worth of liquor. Or it can even be straight liquor. I actually have a flask that has Jägermeister in it sitting around. Uh, but the top cap, here's the thing, is alcohol evaporates. So the top cap of that, they would use chapstick. Because here's the thing, it's not going to affect with the flavor, the taste, or anything like that. And chapstick is safe to ingest. You shouldn't eat it because it can cause diarrhea. But if you accidentally get a little bit on your lip and it ends up in your mouth, not a big deal. And that's the thing, is if you do that with Vicks Vapor Rub, which is petroleum, you don't want to be eating petroleum. Petroleum jelly, that's Vicks Vapor Rub and Vaseline and all that. Not only do you not want to be eating it, it doesn't taste very good. Especially if it's like the Vapor Rub stuff. It's got like weird chemicals in it and whatnot. Uh, yeah, it's not really a fun thing. And when you're trying to drink alcohol, you know, getting vapor rub near your nostrils is not very pleasant. Uh, in fact, on that note, one of the things I used to do to friends when they were asleep, so I'd take a little dab of Vicks Vapor Rub and I would just right across the top of their lip, and they would wake up real fast because there's three things about that. It's very minty fresh, it burns, and doesn't feel very good, and the smell is very unpleasant. And because it's a petroleum oil jelly, it doesn't wash off. Uh, if you do that to your friends while they're sleeping, be ready for them to promptly get up and want to fight you. uh, but chapstick is a much better solution, unless you're Indian or Muslim and you view animal fats as something that either, in the case of Muslims, should not be touched because it's unclean. You know, that's your religion, that's your own prerogative. Or in the case of the Indian, and specifically the Indonesian from India, uh, you know, the cow is sacred. Okay, so these contain a mixture of fats and gelatins from who knows what, and yes, the same gelatins that can be found in Jello or gummy bears. Gummy bears aren't vegan safe.